Laura Ingraham Show.
Welcome for the first full week after the Thanksgiving holiday. What is it? Cyber Monday. Brett Witterbull in for Laura Ingraham. I'll be keeping you company for the next 3 hours. You normally hear me on 760 KFMB out in San Diego, America's finest city. A ton of stuff we're going to cover today, including this recount insanity with Hillary Clinton and Jill Stein. We'll talk about the death of the dictator Fidel Castro. But first, in front of mind, we have to talk about this drama involving the Romney back and forth and the Kellyanne Conway back and forth and inside the Trump campaign, all that sort of stuff. Let's jump right in. As always, we'd love to hear from you at any time, right? You can follow Laura on Twitter at Ingraham Angle, and you can also check in via the phones as well at 855-40-LAURA. Let's dive right into this. Yesterday, fireworks going off around the Sunday morning chat shows as you looked at Kellyanne Conway verbalizing this is the very frustration that so many people who voted for President-elect Donald Trump went out and made the case that Mitt Romney's a bad pick, that Mitt Romney may be the one thing that would undermine the confidence that so many people who queued up at rallies for the last, 18 months and then went out there on election day and voted for Donald Trump. Mitt Romney might be a no-go, no bueno. We don't want him. We don't need him in the mix. That's a huge mistake. Don't do it. Don't do it. What do you think Kellyanne Conway's end game is? Because answering that question will help you understand what's going on with the Secretary of State drama. Make no mistake, the media loves this. The big winner in this argument and this back and forth, the media, the press, they love this. They see a crack in the wall at Trump Tower that is not there. It's a huge mistake to believe that that's the case. But what is Kellyanne Conway's endgame? Who is she articulating for? I would submit to you that she's articulating for the base. She's articulating for the people who went out there and queued up and voted for Donald Trump. And she's giving voice to that frustration. Mitt Romney, at least in my opinion, is a qualified businessman. He's a high-profile figure. He was a failed presidential candidate in 2012, failing when he had the opportunity to go in for the kill against, rhetorically speaking, of course, against Barack Obama in that debate. Mitt Romney's, let's be honest. He's kind of an average player. He brings some measure of cachet. He's got a pedigree. He's a known quantity. He's got some measure of respect by the mainstream media and the chattering class, the pundit class. But really, when it gets down to the people that matter, the people that actually went and crawled across broken glass, that went out and banged on doors and phone banked and got federateds and things like that during the primaries and then into the general, he does not serve the interest of the average voter for Donald Trump. If the mission of the Donald Trump campaign was, and as president is, to make America great again, does Mitt Romney serve that? Does he make America great again? I would argue he can help make Romney great. Marge. He can help Mitt Romney elevate himself and become the one thing the media is desirous of, a high-profile critic of Donald Trump inside the administration. Mitt Romney, and this is what people point to constantly with Romney. Oh, he ran the Olympics in Utah and took it from the brink of bankruptcy, and they were losing money, and Mitt Romney's the guy. He's the right prescription. Are you kidding me? Point to Peter Ueberroth as the Secretary of State, please, back in the mid-'80s. He ran the Los Angeles Olympics and was called a genius for doing it because he introduced marketing and television. Mitt Romney was put in charge of something that's got a global audience built into it, and he helped make it a little bit of money. Does that mean he's qualified to sit across the table from Fidel Castro's representatives, Vladimir Putin's representatives, Khomeini's representatives in Tehran? Is he capable of backstopping Bibi Netanyahu, helping him out as he faces the new renewed ISIS threat coming in, pouring across from the Golan Heights? Is he that guy? Is he the guy that is going to go out there and adequately push? I'm not even saying in a superior way. I'm saying adequately push the foreign policy vision of Donald Trump. No. I mean, come on. What are we pretending not to know today? Mitt Romney, and I'm not even factoring in the Utah speech when he tried to take out Donald Trump, and I'm not even factoring in the fact that the guy couldn't even get off his duff and go to the convention in Cleveland. He's part of the Kasich, Bush, Lindsey Graham, Juan McCain, sort of never Trumpocracy out there, who should not be rewarded for that. Sorry. So Kellyanne Conway becomes the bad guy here. Not buying it. Kellyanne Conway took a campaign that was at least in rough waters when she got there with Bannon, and she righted the ship and pointed it towards victory. Kellyanne Conway's interesting because at least in my experience out here in San Diego, in America's finest city, I have noted from day one, and I'll bet you if I open up a couple of phone lines in this regard, I will hear from people that will match this profile. I heard from day one, the most fervent defenders of Donald Trump were women, female voters out there. Oh, remember the big gender gap we heard about? Yeah, I didn't see it. Women who backed Trump stuck with Trump in a way than male counterparts. Men supported Donald Trump, but the women who adopted Trump early and pushed for Donald Trump early, they stuck with him. And Kellyanne Conway is pushing and defending Trump's best interests, I believe. Now, I had somebody email me over the weekend. Is it possible she's playing good cop, bad cop? Maybe she's playing or the good cop or the I don't know. Well, there's no way of knowing what's going on here, but you can tell by the temperament of the media and how they've decided that it's everybody must key on Kellyanne Conway Day, that this is phony and this is fraudulent. Now, look, does Mitt Romney have what it takes to be the Secretary of State? Well, it depends on who the president is. It depends on who the president is. Can he articulate Donald Trump's foreign policy? Rudy Giuliani articulate Donald Trump's foreign policy vision? I do believe so. Did David Petraeus articulate Donald Trump's foreign policy vision? Yeah, I think so. Vetted critic. Putting Romney in there as Secretary of State, in my opinion, puts this candidate and this president-elect and the future president who will be sworn in January, it puts him in a radically different light. It opens the door to somebody who is on videotape saying negative things about him. And every time there's a perceived disagreement or a leak out of Foggy Bottom, and you know there will be day one, people are going to go to that videotape. People are going to say that, look at this, Mitt Romney, he was never really a Trump believer. Does this mean there's a civil war inside? Look at the people who are lined up against Mitt Romney. You tell me. Newt Gingrich, not a lightweight, not a goofy guy, not some hyper-partisan wacko. Newt Gingrich doesn't think it's a good choice. Rudy Giuliani clearly doesn't think it's a good choice. Kellyanne Conway doesn't think it's a very good choice. Mike Huckabee doesn't think it's a very good choice. I'll bet you if you sat him down in a private room somewhere, Ted Cruz probably would roll his eyes. You think Ted Cruz would take Mitt Romney as a Secretary of State? So we're going to all blast Kellyanne Conway for saying what everybody's thinking in the room, right? And the big report today, CNBC, MSNBC, Mika and Morning Joe, and they were just absolutely doing backflips over this one. Oh, they are irate inside the upper echelon of the Trump campaign that Kellyanne Conway would do this. Who's speaking for you? Who's articulating your take? Did you wake up today or in any of the prior 10 days and say to yours, what Donald Trump needs is a Mitt Romney Secretary of State? It probably wasn't in your top 10 considerations. So just watch the way the press acts. Just watch the way the media behave. The more hyper they get about taking out Kellyanne Conway, you know what's going on. They see Mitt Romney not as a great Secretary of State, but a great source of drama, mayhem, and dissension inside the Trump camp. I'm not buying it. You shouldn't buy it either. I want to hear from you straight ahead right now. 855-40-LAURA, 855-40-LAURA. It's Brett Witterbull. I am in for Laura Ingraham on your healthy radio addiction. A great time. It is Brett Witterbull from the West Coast, from America's finest city in San Diego, sitting in for Laura Ingraham today. And as always, we want to hear from you at 855-40-LAURA. Let's think about this for a quick second. What was the big narrative driver going into Sunday? The big narrative that was out there that the press was pushing was something very, very specific. I want you to kind of keep that front of mind. I want you to think about this. And I'm going to go out on the phones and talk to Mary in Missouri. I want to talk to Mary. She's going to feed beautifully into this point. Hello, Mary. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm great. I believe that Kellyanne Conway was on the media yesterday, along with Newt Gingrich, Mike Huckabee, everybody, but specifically Kellyanne Conway, with the sanction of President-elect Trump. I think she knows exactly what she was going to say. He knew exactly what he was going to say. I think he's playing the media. He knew when he put Mitt Romney out there that the media would go crazy over it. And he's going ahead with other things. I don't think he has any intention of making Mitt Romney Secretary of State.
I appreciate the call. Thank you for calling, Mary. You are very close to really what's gone on here, okay? And I'm going to tell you what it is. The narrative going in, and it started building right around Thanksgiving, and it moved all the way through Saturday night into early Sunday morning. And that was the discussion of the Jill Stein, now Hillary Clinton sanctioned recount, right? And one thing we have from Donald Trump is this. You have one opportunity to get the attention of the American people, and then you have to keep the attention of the American people. Now, sure, look, he is the president-elect, so there is a built-in amount of attention he's going to get. But starting to form was, there's recounts. There's a recount in Wisconsin. There's a recount that's going to be coming in Michigan, in Pennsylvania. I don't know. Is there maybe a possibility that something happened here, that the Russians hacked the situation? Is that all possible? Well, no, it's in fact not possible at all. Not possible at all. But what Donald Trump did was find himself back at the center of the narrative. And that's what you have going on right now. You have a back and forth with Kellyanne Conway and the press and unnamed insiders high up in Trump Tower who are being covered by the cable nets, by the wire services, by the blogosphere, by the Twitterverse, by the Facebookians, talking about this Mitt Romney drama. But the reality is, when you drill down deeper into that conversation, you understand what's really at play here. What's really at play here is about a power move. If Donald Trump didn't want Kellyanne Conway in the mix, if Donald Trump didn't like Kellyanne Conway, if he wasn't going to be loyal to her anymore, if he wasn't going to do any of those things, she'd be out. This is a guy who's not shy about firing people or removing people. I am sick and tired of the narrative that exists out in the press that says, well, Donald Trump is just this passive guy who's going to be the next president, and all these people have to make decisions because he doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, look, there was a report on Saturday or Sunday that said, well, Donald Trump had an almost 1 hour long conversation with Barack Obama. Oh, okay. So the incoming president talking to the current president, but it's reported in the press as if it's like some kind of a tutorial. He has to sit Donald Trump down and explain to him the way of the world. Once again, remind me what Barack Obama's qualifications were when he entered 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. A half a Senate term, an Illinois State Senate organizer background, right? oh, but Donald Trump is not qualified to be the president. Only Barack Obama can be the president, because that's nonsense. I heard an analogy today that was absolutely hilarious. I heard somebody like David Axelrod attacking Barack Obama on the Sunday shows for picking Hillary Clinton as his Secretary of State. No, it wouldn't, because David Axelrod wouldn't do that. The people on the left all march in lockstep together. Even when they know they're wrong, they're going to march in lockstep together. What you're seeing is sort of the sausage-making process in this new administration. He vowed to drain the swamp. He vowed to run the insiders out. He vowed to take it to the lobbyist class. What you're seeing is the T word, not treason to Donald Trump. What you're seeing is transparency in the process. Kellyanne Conway is merely articulating the concerns of every American out across this country who voted for Donald Trump and who maybe didn't vote for Donald Trump, who are looking at Mitt Romney and going, oh, please, spare me. Let's talk to Henry in Florida. Henry, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for taking my call. I spent the whole weekend reassuring my wife, who's the biggest Trumpster in the world, that assuring her that Kellyanne had Trump's blessing on this, and that I just think he just wants to keep himself in the media. But there's no way he's going to have Mitt as Secretary of State. But she was on her Facebook with her friends all weekend. I mean, she must have had 50 of her friends they're all concerned. I'm just telling you, there's a little panic going on. And I'm calming, I don't panic, and I'm calming her down, say, don't worry. She's not going to make a broad statement like that unless Trump knows about it in advance. And it's
Henry,
it's planned.
You are 100% right, my friend. You are absolutely correct. I appreciate you calling in here. The reality is, Kellyanne Conway, she can be shut down. She can do any number of these things could happen from Donald Trump and from the top, and it's not happening. She is giving voice to a series of concerns. And again, as I said, take a look at who's expressing the same concerns. Tell me these are bad people. Newt Gingrich, Rudy Giuliani, Mike Huckabee, among the most loyal surrounding Donald Trump. Brett Witterbull in for Laura. Don't forget to check out the amazing website LifeZette. Also, follow Laura Ingraham at Ingraham Angle on Twitter. I'm Brett Witterbull. I'm in for Laura Ingraham today, and you can follow me on Twitter as well at Winterbull Show, Winter BLE Show at Winterbull Show. You would hear me out here in San Diego Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. on AM 760 KFMB. The other thing that got everybody flapping their gums about and typing on Facebook about it, on Twitter about over the weekend, was this bizarre push by Dr. Jill Stein to get a recount going in the state of Wisconsin, and then presumably to go and push for the recounts in Michigan and Pennsylvania. This is so absurd as to be laughable, and I've seen every sort of theory handle this issue, and I think we need to dive into this. Here's the problem with the recount model being pushed by Jill Stein. Are you ready for this? It's going to blow your mind. It is based entirely in fiction. It really is. It is based entirely in fiction. There were a number of computer scientists, one of them from the University of Michigan, who, by the way, Wolverines did not have a good weekend. They took a beating at the hands of Ohio State there in overtime, causing Jim Harbaugh to smash his headset. But one of the computer scientists is this guy, Halderman or something, from the state of Michigan. And they came out and they said, there could be some suspicious voting trends in a few precincts in Michigan and in Wisconsin and in Pennsylvania. So immediately, Jill Stein was on the mission. We're going to start raising money for a recount. We're going to raise like $2 million, $4 million, $5 million, $10 million, whatever it takes. We're going to get these recounts going. And she filed the paperwork just at the deadline on Friday to initiate the recounts in Wisconsin, and then presumably moving on to Michigan and Pennsylvania later in this week. And then right on cue, here came the clown car in the parade to open the doors, and out poured Team Hillary as they came out and said, we are joining the effort of Jill Stein to ensure that everybody's vote is counted. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry about that. This is nonsense. The number of votes we're talking about, 70,000 in Pennsylvania, right? 10,000 in Michigan, and another 12,000 in Wisconsin. You're talking about Hillary Clinton having to go up there to that plate with Jill Stein, and she's going to have to be David Ortiz at the bottom of the ninth with one out left against the Yankees, and she's got to play for a miracle. She's got to flip 3 states and like 103,000 votes the other way. Now, as anybody out there who's ever watched any of these recounts knows, it doesn't happen. It does not happen. There's one this recount idiocy, though. We might get to see how much fraud was built in Flint and Dearborn and Detroit and Pittsburgh and Philly and Milwaukee and Madison. That's going to be the one silver lining to this. And, Donald Trump, he got destroyed by the mainstream press when they weren't hammering him over Kellyanne Conway and Mitt Romney. Oh, they were going after him for tweeting over the weekend that millions of voting illustrious fraud. And what did they do? Their heads popped. The mainstream press. MSNBC anchors, their heads popped. CNN, well, I didn't even see CNN. I don't even watch CNN. Fox anchors were all aghast about this. They're talking about some measure of fraud that we all know exists inside the voting system in this country in these different states. Well, you got 9,000 jurisdictions that go and vote on Election Day, right? You got the 57 states, according to Barack Obama. You got 9,000 jurisdictions. The left will have you believe that there is no fraud. There is zero fraud. There is absolutely no proof of any kind of fraud at all. And they'll always use like this weird little, well, of course there's 0.0000001 repeating percent of fraud out there. Yes, we'll grant that. But there's really no fraud out there. It is fraudless. They'll tell you in the federal budget, waste, fraud, and abuse. It doesn't really exist. There's no fraud there. There's no welfare fraud. There's no EBT fraud. There's no voting fraud. It's remarkable. And yet time and time again, they're proven wrong. I'll take you right up the road from where I am. You get on the interstate I-5 and you go north. You head on up. You hang a left, get over to the 405. And then you head up into Long Beach. And you can Google this story. I'll tell you where it came from. KTLA in Los Angeles had the story of an old lady. I mean, like legitimately an old lady, like an 87, 88-year-old old lady at her house, a little one-bedroom apartment in Long Beach, and all of a sudden, like magic, the post office drops off 86 mail-in ballots registered to that address. But there's no fraud. The fraud is fake. The fraud is racist. The fraud is denying people their right to vote. There's no fraud. Stop it with the fraud talk. There's no fraud. Of course there is. Are you kidding me? President-elect Donald Trump was excoriated when he said that he would wait and reserve his options to see what happens as a result of the voting. Hillary Clinton called it reckless. Barack Obama said it was a threat. You can't say that. That's a threat to democracy. We have a peaceful transition to power. You can't question the election. People pounded Donald Trump. Dana Milbank pounded Donald Trump. All of the Washington Post. I think Jeff Bezos had a special Amazon.com sale to pound Donald Trump because he was undermining democracy when he raised questions about a system potentially being rigged because of fraud. And look, I've heard plenty of people say, my wife included, said to me over the weekend, you know what? Fine. Let's pop the tabs on every state. You want to do recount? Recount them all. Let's find out how many votes got stolen in California. Let's find out how many votes got stolen in New York and in Illinois. Let's find out what went on in South Florida. Let's find out. Let's pop the tabs on all of them. You're going to recount. You just want to cherry pick 3 states? Recount them all. I said, no. Listen, let them do these 3 states. They're going to look like clowns. Because you might uncover 250 or 300 votes this way or 400 votes that way. My prediction is Trump actually ends up picking up votes because of the aforementioned Madison, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, Philly, Flint, Dearborn, Detroit model, where you know that there were probably Trump votes that got shredded or were suppressed. My guess is he picks votes up. My guess is we end up uncovering the fraud. But they want to make Donald Trump's Twitter comment about millions voting illegally. They want to point to that and say, well, see, he actually supports the recounts because he doesn't have confidence in the results. No, he's making a broader point that there is fraud in this system. There is systemic fraud in this system. You want evidence? Go look at how Al Franken got his Senate seat when they found a ballot box filled with ballots in the back of a Caprice. Come on now. 855-40-LAURA, 855-40-LAURA. Brett Witterbull sitting in for Laura Ingraham. Let's go out and talk to Lynn in Missouri. Lynn, how are you? What's on your mind today?
Hi, Brett. I'm doing great. I just wanted to make mention that I am a member of the Mormon Church, and we have certain things that we're asked to do to stay in touch with our Heavenly Father and do those things which are right, simple things like following the Ten Commandments, etc. Mr. Romney has proven that he doesn't find it necessary to stick with those things that he has been taught. His presidential campaign his waffling was evidence of that, and any man that will turn his back on his God will also turn his back on his country. He should not be in the position he's being considered for.
Wow, that is quite an indictment of Mitt Romney. That is a remarkable shot at Romney. But the reality is, I don't think Mitt Romney is disloyal to the country. I just think he's going to serve his own purposes if he's elevated to the position of Secretary of State. I do believe you're seeing somebody who will be much, much more akin to Colin Powell as Secretary of State and will be this vessel for dissent pushed by the active left, the academic left, the Hollywood left, the activist classes out there, hoping that he can be the guy who pushes Donald Trump in the, quote, right direction. That's going to be the end. My belief is he will not get the job. My belief is he is. But what about Fidel? Straight ahead, the death of a despot. What it means for you, your reactions as well. We'll talk about any of the stuff we've hit so far as well at 855-40-LAURA, 855-40-LAURA. I'm Brett Witterbull. I'm in for Laura Ingraham. It's your healthy radio addiction, The Laura Ingraham Show. It is Brett Witterbull in for Laura Ingraham. Phone number to be a part of the conversation. As always, 855-40-LAURA. Check out lifezet.com. Lots of great stuff there. And we remember, gosh, I wish there was a way we wouldn't have to do, say, a moment of silence, but a moment of loudness and joy at the passing of despot number one, despot numero uno in this hemisphere, and arguably a top 5 all-time around the world, and Fidel Castro, who died Friday night, just hours after Colin Kaepernick sported a Fidel Castro jersey in a press conference. Talk about a tone-deaf NFL player. But Fidel Castro is no more. He is dead. He is gone. And I've been absolutely shocked watching the people on the left pick and choose this murderous thug's legacy for bright spots. They're looking for these bright spots in the death of Fidel Castro. They're saying things like, well, he did promise to educate the people of Cuba, and he did get people access to education. He did promise better health care. He did promise certain things. I heard Soledad O'Brien doing an interview saying he advanced significantly Afro-Cuba relations. I don't even know what you do with that. You have to put yourself into some kind of a bizarre yoga pose to get to a place where you point to something positive about Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro was 100% bad, 100% evil. You know, in Hollywood, you'll hear these screenwriters talk about this all the time. They'll say, you need the petting the puppy moment in the movie. You say, well, what does that mean? They'll say, you can never have an all-evil villain. Like the villain has to smile at a baby at some point in the movie, has to enjoy ice cream or flash back to his childhood. You have to have a humanizing something for the villain. And they call it the pet the puppy moment where, look, bring a bunch of people, buddy, he loves that little doggy, doesn't he? He's treating him nicely. And it makes you feel like you've got a human connection with this tyrant, with this villain. Fidel Castro has no pet the puppy moment. He never smiled at a baby. Even Soledad O'Brien used to be when talking about Castro, she said, well, Batista would just kill you back in the day when he ran the island of Cuba. But Castro, well, he would kill you and then he would deny your family jobs and your children housing. Yes, that's what Stalinists do. Yes, that's what dirty, filthy, rotten communists do. Yeah, people like to run around with their Che T-shirts and their Mumia T-shirts. They like to be alternative. And they like to say, hey, communism and socialism is no, it's not. It's a one-way ticket to a death camp. It is. Just because Cuba is a place with an agreeable climate, nice beaches, and a close proximity to the United States doesn't mean it can't be a death camp. And when you look at the track record of what it was that Fidel Castro did, not just to the people of Cuba, but what he did when he exported this diseased ideology into Latin America, Sub-Saharan and Northern Africa, and his detailed work in helping as the incubator of Middle Eastern terrorism, there is nothing good that can be said about that rotten, fatigue-wearing relic of the worst in human history. This is a guy who in some cases was the surrogate mother, in other cases the father, and in every case the midwife of evil throughout this planet. Not just Cubans lost their lives. Millions lost their lives. And to this day, millions continue to suffer for this twisted, narcissistic, dark ideology that Fidel Castro brought forth on this planet. Oh, you have some doubts. That's okay. That's all right. In just minutes, I'm going to break down for you exactly what it was Castro did. Because most people have forgotten a little thing called the 1960s, the 1970s, and the 1980s. When his ideology were running rampaging across this globe, racking up body count, enslaving millions, and offering up a very, very dark vision for humanity itself. Oh, we'll talk about the education and the health care, but we'll also talk about the lives denied. Brett Witterbull in for Laura Ingraham, your healthy radio addiction. I'm Brett Witterbull. I'm in for Laura Ingraham, and I will be keeping you company for the next couple of hours. Talking about the big stuff that's moved in the last 24, 48 hours, including the death of Fidel Castro, the push by Fidel Castro sympathizer Jill Stein for recounts in 3 different states to try to deny Donald Trump the presidency of the United States, and, of course, the back and forth over who will be the next Secretary of State of these United States. Will it be Mitt Romney? Will it be Rudy? David Petraeus? A name still to be determined? Breaking it all down for you. And when we went to break at the end of the last hour, I told you we were going to take a long, hard look at the track record of Fidel Castro. Arguably a top 5 murderous dictator thug in human history. Now, there are a lot of people on the left who have praised Brother Fidel. He's a man who pushed the revolution from Cuba to the rest of the world. You may commemorate Christmas. You may celebrate New Year's. You may love to celebrate that date in Havana in 1966 at the Tricontinental Congress when Fidel Castro brought every scumbag and dirtbag around the world to come on into Havana and plot the overthrow of elected governments and democracies around this planet and instill communism. How bad a guy is Fidel Castro? Vladimir Putin is not going to his funeral. Vladimir Putin is opting out of a visit to commemorate the sacrifices of Fidel Castro. We don't know exactly where the administration in Washington stands, but they have certainly heard warning after warning from people like Senator Ted Cruz, Ileana Ross-Layton, and Newt Gingrich saying, hey, don't you dare send Joe Biden. Don't you dare send Barack Obama. Don't you dare send John Kerry to Havana to salute Fidel Castro. Don't do it. Because by commemorating his life, by remembering his life, you're also commemorating and remembering his deeds. The propaganda line has been set for decades. Oh, Fidel Castro brought opportunity and equality to the people of this island nation. Yes, sure he did. It brought education to the people of this island nation, brought health care to the people of this island nation and around the world. Yeah, yet when Fidel Castro was facing critical illnesses in the early 2000s, he didn't go to a Havana hospital. He went out to Spain to go get Spanish doctors to treat him. The guy was a rotten, murderous, lying, killing hypocrite. But I take you back to the Tricontinental Congress held in Havana in 1966, attended by revolutionary leaders from around the world. At the meeting, Castro insisted that bullets, not ballots, was the way to achieve power and provided the institutional means to promote his anti-American violent line. He insisted that the conditions existed for armed revolutionary struggle. He criticized those who opposed armed struggle. Looking at some of the other leaders in Latin America as sellouts. He supported guerrillas and terrorist groups in Guatemala, Venezuela, and Bolivia, which brought violence and suffering to the people in those already poor countries. Over the next 2 decades, under the Cuban leadership and backed by the Soviets, you saw agents from the America Department, the subversive arm of the Cuban Commie Party, Castro using his armed forces to dispatch fighters around the world in Latin America and in Africa. In Nicaragua, or as they used to say on the news channels, Nicaragua. In Nicaragua, Cuban military personnel, weapons, and intelligence supported and helped bring to power Bill de Blasio's best buddies, the Sandinistas. In El Salvador, that bloody civil war was in part fomented and aided by Cuba. In Africa, Castro achieved significant victories. You saw the stooges and client states for the commies take power in Angola. You saw the Southwest African People's Organization, also known as SWAPO, and the ANC forces fighting in South Africa. Here in the United States, the Macheteros, a Puerto Rican terrorist group, did their deeds. Cuba focused particular attention on the black struggle in the United States, aiding, arming, and training the Black Panthers, the Black Liberation Army, as well as giving safe haven to cop killers, murderers, and hijackers on their island. Castro continuously promoted revolutionary independence in Puerto Rico, and supported the macheteros who committed terrorist acts and bank robberies in the United States. Many of those killers, those terrorists, still live in Cuba today. Oh, but he wasn't done. In the late 1960s, there was a meeting convened in Havana, a meeting of the worst of the absolute worst. Forget the suicide squad. This was the murder squad. Middle Eastern groups and regimes got together and met up and schemed in how they were going to take down Israel. Cuban troops fought on the side of the Arab states, including Syria, during the Yom Kippur War. Castro sent military instructors and advisors to the Palestinian bases, cooperated with Libya in the founding of the World Mathaba, a terrorist movement, and established close military cooperation in Iraq, Libya, South Yemen, the Western Sahara, the PLO, and throughout the Middle East. You go through the groups that have been supported over the years, and it reads like a who's who of murderers, thugs, rapists. You look at what he did in the Middle East with Black September, the PLO, and it's shocking. You don't hear a word of condemnation from the left in this country, from the so-called progressives. No, you hear celebrations of education and health care. Look only to the sad situation going on as we speak in Venezuela, a nation so poor that the people have been reduced to eating zoo animals. Inflation so explosive that you can't even put your money in the wallet anymore. So depressed is the currency. You look at the violence that has racked Colombia, where FARC, one of the numero uno clients of Fidel Castro, continues their murderous rampages. You look at the bombings that took place in Spain with ETA, the Basque terrorists. You look at the Irish Republican Army, who established their Latin American headquarters in Havana, place again. You see terrorists benefiting from this murderous thug with a demented, twisted ideology of slavery. And yet they'll remember Fidel Castro as the man who stood on the bulwark giving the finger to the United States of America. He was a voice for revolution and for resistance. No, he wasn't. He was every bit as evil as the inner circle of Stalin. He was every bit as evil as the inner circle of Lenin. He was every bit as evil as the inner circle of Pol Pot, Ho Chi Minh, Mao Zedong. He was every bit as evil as the inner circle of Adolf Hitler. We better not send a high-level rep to attend his funeral, for by our attendance the world will know we grant our assent and endorsement of this man's murderous policies. Oh, and for the record, when President Barack Obama opened relations with the Cubans, he took Cuba off the terrorism list. Cuba is no longer a terrorist state. He granted concession after concession after concession to the rotten Castro brothers, the tyrants who hold that island nation hostage. He sided with the Castro brothers over the ladies in white. He sided with the Castro brothers over the political prisoners. He sided with the forces of absolute darkness. (855) Laura. I'm Brett Witterbull, sitting in for Laura Ingraham. We've got your phone calls straight ahead. I am Brett Witterbull. I'm in for Laura Ingraham. Don't forget to follow her on Twitter at Ingraham Angle, and check out every day when you get up and you want to get the latest in the day. Check out lifezen.com. You want to follow me on Twitter, you want to reach out, feel free at Winterbull Show. That's WINTERBLE Show. A lot of people have been patiently waiting. Let's jump out on the phones and check in with, is it Jaime in Oregon? How are you, sir?
Hello, Brett. It's Jamie.
Jamie, I'm sorry. I misread that.
Jaime is Spanish. So I forgot what I was going to call about. No, actually, it's been so while. No, I've been on hold a bit. But anyway, let me get to the point about the elections. What it is I think the Progressive Party now has morphed. You know what I mean? From the left. Now that it's not really your father's political party anymore. And now basically they have the mindset of kind of like a gold bricking mindset. Well, what they are is they're the rich child of the California movie star, like Charlie Sheen of Martin Sheen. And Martin Sheen is like conservatism. Now Charlie Sheen is getting drugs and all that stuff. And so this, with the voting thing, I believe, is what it is the left is now throwing their drug dealer or whatever. Like Charlie Sheen, would throw his drug dealer under the bus if he gets busted by his dad, or if something doesn't work, you know what I mean? If something doesn't work. So what they're doing is they're throwing the voting apparatus, all their scam, under the bus, so that way conservatism has to go in there and gut it all out. And then guess what happens? Now you have this empty space, and guess what? Now you have to have people from one half of the party come in there and fill it back in. And now you just replenished it. They reap everything the conservatism sows. They are the parasite. The host doesn't need a parasite. A parasite needs a host. You know what I mean? And that's what they are. They're the mischievous part. And basically they're like gold breakers. And that's what. And then earlier about Cuba, you were talking about Cuba, Fidel Castro, and they were a suicide bomber for Russia in 1963 or 64, and they didn't pull the pin. You know what I mean? And they didn't launch the missiles, and they didn't cause the Cuban missile strike. They were supposed to go down in ashes, and they didn't. So they became disenchanted from the Communist Party. That's why Putin's not.
Well, okay, hold on. Let me unpack some of the stuff that you've been talking about here. Okay, first of all, yes, you are correct. The Democratic Party today, Jamie, is not the Democratic Party of before. It is absolutely not the Democratic Party of our parents, our grandparents. It is a wholly owned subsidiary of the global socialists, of the worldwide left, whatever you want to say. This is not a party that is in any way, shape, or form in tune with the desires and needs of the American people. While you have people on the left running around and saying, Hillary Clinton got 2 million more votes than Donald Trump. Look at the states she won. Look at the map. They are a bi-coastal, lifestyle-driven party. California, Oregon, Washington, and then everything from New Jersey north up through the Northeast, and then over to Illinois. I mean, this is it. This is a party that is not a national party. It is at best a series of regional parties. This is a coalition of aggrieved groups, environmentalists, LGBT, Hollywood, people who want open borders, George Soros, you name it. It is an amalgam of a party. And whoever's barking loudest gets all the attention in the party. It's not a party that's driven by an ideology that the American people want. The party is not reflecting the values of the American people. It is trying to push the values top down onto the American people, and they were rejected on Election Day. It's that simple. They were absolutely rejected on Election Day. So they are completely out of touch with the American people. And if they think for a minute Keith Ellison is the ticket forward running the DNC, a man who just a number of years ago called for a black separate country or a black separate state, you're out of touch with the American people. Nancy Pelosi needs to be reelected as their minority leader in the House. And it will be a very high cotton for folks who are looking for more conservative pickups. 855-40-LAURA, 855-40-LAURA. Let's jump out and talk to Nick, beautiful Wyoming. Hello, Nick. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I want to make a comment over the Castro situation. I live in Wyoming now,
Sure.
But you don't forget certain things that you grow up around. I was born and raised in Miami, and I left Miami in '85. And seeing how these people are actually, they're basically throwing a party because that dictator, Castro himself, has died. They're remembering what it was like. The people that live there now, only few are celebrating the fact of that he is actually dead. A lot of people ain't going to celebrate because they know they're going to get killed if they do. There's people that enjoy the fact that he's gone. Now maybe they can go home and see their family that they've missed. They've had people, like you said, he's up there with the ranks of Hitler on things that he's done. I had friends that were Cubans that came over on boats after they got out of the little fenced-in areas that they, if you watch Scarface, you'll actually know what I'm talking about. That was a real
Yeah, sure.
theme. They are people that, those that had good intentions and have done great. I met some of them. I went to school with them, grew up with them for years. They're absolutely ecstatic over the fact that he is gone. I mean, I don't see too many people here in America that are going to be upset over him being gone. And
well, no. Again, what you got is the people over there on the left, right? The Hollywood types. I mean, there's a story out of the Wrap that I was reading earlier today about the 9 celebrities who fell in love with, who were seduced by Fidel Castro. People like crazy Oliver Stone, wacky Sean Penn, but it's people like Spielberg, people like Jack Nicholson. You go down the list of these folks who felt simpatico with Fidel Castro. Robert Redford's another one of these clowns. Chevy Chase. You go down the list. It's remarkable when you see the people who somehow have this blind spot for this immense evil. And let's not forget the entire reason why we normalized relations with Cuba was instigated by Jay-Z and Beyonce doing their honeymoon in Cuba. If you go back and look at this from a few years ago, they go and they do it. They come back, they talk to Barack Obama, and they go, hey, it's a great place, man. This is the hot new place to go and hang out. You got to normalize relations with the Cubans. Major League Baseball wanted to see it happen. Oh, we can get a great supply of ball players. It's going to be great. Come on, you got to normalize. So what does Barack Obama do? Yet again, horrible timing. If he had waited 2 more years to try to open up relations, he would have done it from a stronger position. Instead, he pulls the trigger 2 years too early, moves to normalize our relations with Cuba, and we have gotten nothing for it. We have gotten nothing for it. And yet it was interesting to hear this morning as I was driving my way into 760 KFMB in San Diego, getting ready for the show for Laura Ingraham, I heard breathless reports on the network news. Oh, flights are beginning to go into Cuba from the United States. How wonderful, how great. What do we get out of the deal? We get more security? We don't get any of that. Coming up, we'll be joined by a very special guest, former governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Jim Gilmore, former presidential candidate as well. Get his thoughts on Romney, the recounts, and Cuba as well. It's Brett Witterbull in for Laura Ingraham, your healthy radio addiction. Don't forget to check out lifezet.com. Also, follow Laura at Ingraham Angle, and follow me anytime you want at Winterbull Show. You normally hear me, or you would normally hear me, say out in San Diego, Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. Pacific on AM 760 KFME. This bit of news that's moving out there. Ohio State University tweets there's an active shooter on campus, and students should, quote, run, hide, and fight. Police are on the scene investigating, and certainly our thoughts and prayers go out to the very good people of Ohio and Ohio State. Stay safe, and we will monitor this story as it evolves. Governor Jim Gilmore, former governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. He's also a former head of the RNC, a man with great expertise when it comes to the complicated worlds of intelligence. And I'm thrilled to welcome him to the show. He's also a former presidential candidate for the United States. Joins us on the line. Governor, how are you?
I'm fine, Brett. Thanks for the chance to talk to Laura's fans nationwide. I appreciate it.
Oh, happy to have you here. I certainly we have an incredibly busy news day happening, coming off of a very busy news weekend. Let me just jump right into it here. I want to get your thoughts on a couple of these big stories that are moving. I want to get your thoughts on the recount, on Castro being dead, and on Mitt Romney. Let me start with this recount effort. This, to me, feels like it's a transparent stunt designed to raise money for Jill Stein and raise questions about the legitimacy of a Donald Trump presidency. Your reaction to this game that is being played between the forces of Hillary Clinton and Jill Stein?
Well, first of all, I remind everybody that Hillary Clinton and Jill Stein also, for that matter, were all beating on Donald Trump for 6 months, talking about how because he was reserving his right to challenge any kind of voter fraud, that somehow that meant he was trying to undermine the democracy. Then as soon as Trump is elected, much to their amazement, they see demonstrations in the streets. Now they're seeing what appears to be sort of a fraudulent effort to undo the campaign with a recount that makes no sense. The Jill Stein people are not offering any theory or facts to support such a recount. Hillary Clinton is not offering any sort of facts to support such a recount. Trump would have had some reason to seek a recount. What's theirs? And the fact is, it's just incredibly hypocritical. And frankly, Brett, it undermines the democracy. This is a case now. Can you imagine if they could upset this election results at this point. This is an undermining of the democracy. This is an attack on the Constitution. The American left ought to be ashamed of themselves, and if the Democratic Party wants to disassociate themselves from this kind of behavior by Clinton and Stein, then they should say so right now.
You know, I know you remember very well back in the early part of this century, right, which sounds like a long time, but really we're talking about 2000, when you were running the RNC. And you remember a time where there was a campaign season, then the election was decided, then we moved on about the governing of the country itself. It feels to me that these forces over on the left have decided to put us into a permanent campaign mode, that for the next 4 years there will be a campaign against Donald Trump. We heard the narratives, like you said, the street demonstrations. We heard the indictments of Jeff Sessions last week as being an attorney general, and Chuck Schumer threatening to hold up these nominations. We've heard this alt-right nonsense, all this sort of stuff. Is this the state of play in 2016? Are we in a permanently entrenched political campaign environment, Governor?
Well, I think that's very unhealthy for the United States. It's time to get the new administration going. Now, Jill Stein can be dismissed as a crackpot, but Hillary Clinton cannot. She was the nominee of the Democratic Party. She's carrying the Democratic Party's banner. The Democratic Party is going to be responsible for this behavior unless they disassociate themselves from Clinton and from Stein on this matter. This is a very bad situation. It undermines the democracy. It's an attack on the Constitution. It's time really to get behind the president-elect. Hillary Clinton conceded the election, and frankly, this just appears to be a rejection of the people's voice. And that includes not only the people across the country, but the people of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio who voted for a change. And now it's time to effectuate that change.
Brett Winterbull sitting in for Laura Ingraham on the Laura Ingraham Show, visiting with Governor Jim Gilmore, former governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Talk about building out this administration. A lot of attention being paid in these last days on the position of Secretary of State, and a lot of incoming coming into Kellyanne Conway as she made her appearances on the Sunday shows, talking about why Mitt Romney's not suited for this job. There's certainly a lot of pushback going both ways. We've heard from Newt Gingrich. We've heard from Mike Huckabee, Rudy Giuliani, Kellyanne Conway. It seems like the only two people we really hadn't heard from are Donald Trump on this process or Mitt Romney on this process, and I understand why that's the case. But what about this battle for the Secretary of State position? It seems to me that it is a vital position, and it seems to me that the media have a rooting interest to have as much division form early as possible. Your thoughts on the right sort of pick for Secretary of State?
Well, first of all, this is entirely a decision of the president-elect to decide what team he's going to pick. To me, I think that we're too much into a horse race and a back and forth on this. I think that we need to be focused on what kind of policy the United States needs to be pursuing going forward. Donald Trump clearly wants to have a change of direction. I think that he wants to make sure that American interests are fully taken into consideration, that the Obama approach to foreign policy has been rejected by the people of the United States, and it's time now to work with the president-elect to help formulate the best possible policy. And I haven't heard a lot out of anybody about trying to do that. I think we just need to really get a team in place that's going to do what's necessary to protect the interests of the United States and to further the interests of democracy across the world. And that's the kind of person who ought to be the Secretary of State, and I hope that Donald Trump has lots of options.
We know the current Secretary of State, John Kerry, has been very agreeable when it's come to articulating, obviously, the foreign policy vision of President Obama and Vice President Biden there. We know that vision has included this normalization push towards Cuba. Fidel Castro dies over the weekend. Friday night he dies. The streets of Miami explode with celebration and I think a release of so much pent-up anger and angst about this man who held that island nation hostage for so many years. He's been more than a thorn in our side. He's been an aid to the Islamist terrorists out there. He's been a key player when it comes to destabilizing Latin America and the hemisphere, even across the Atlantic into Africa. I want you to put on your intelligence hat here, and I know you've got a great deal of experience in that regard, Governor Jim Gilmore. Fidel is gone, What does this mean for American foreign policy and an opportunity for us to reassert ourselves in a post-Obama world?
Well, there are a couple of things here. The first thing that I think your listeners need to remember is something that the press has not been saying, and that is that Fidel Castro, at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, actually advocated a nuclear attack on the United States. So at a time of the highest possible tension, you've seen all the stories and all the movies about this, Fidel Castro was actually suggesting that a nuclear attack be made on the United States. It was Khrushchev and the Russians that had to pull him back, for crying out loud. So this was not a good guy. This was a man that not only has been a brutal dictator on his own people, but he actually threatened to actually destroy all civilization itself, and he put himself in that kind of position. This is not a good guy. We should not say anything nice about him. Now, the second thing is that we need to stand for democracy and with the people of Cuba. This is a historic opportunity for Cuba to move back into the realm of civilized people. If Obama's opened up that door, that's a good thing, but we can't just give in to the dictators of Cuba. We have to stand with the people of Cuba on behalf of democracy, and I think that day is coming. The Cubans don't have to be a satellite of the United States in order to behave like normal people in a normal civilized world, and that means standing for their own people's rights within a new democracy within Cuba, and that is the moment that I think that we're all hoping for.
And I would be remiss if I didn't note also that this is an opportunity for now President-elect Donald Trump, and as he assumes office in January, once we get past all the recount nonsense with Jill Stein and company, this is a chance for him, I think, to recommit to our allies throughout the world. People like Netanyahu who have been left behind, potential new allies who are coming to power in Europe, and allies that we have maybe grown distant from, South Korea and also Japan. I think all of this represents a true opportunity, right?
I believe it does. I think that the president-elect believes in a stronger foreign policy and a stronger United States military and a more assertive foreign policy, not for the purpose of going to war, but for the purpose of deterring war. And I think that the Obama softness is actually creating opportunities for there to be conflict that it really was not necessary. So there does need to be a change, and the Obama policy of weakness and irresolution is dangerous, and we need a stronger and more decisive leader. I think the people of the United States decided that, which means that our allies across the world, our NATO allies, our friends in NATO need to understand that we will stand with them. The Israelis need to know we'll stand with them. And be a stronger, more decisive people than we have been. And our adversaries, we need to communicate. We're not trying to go to war with anybody, but we will not be pushed around in the Pacific. We will not be pushed around in Eastern Europe. The Russians are not people we should have confidence in these circumstances. It's time for the Russians themselves to regain their democracy and move forward like civilized people. The United States is the only power in the world that can actually stand for justice and for democracy in the world, and it's time for us to continue to play that role the way Ronald Reagan did.
So here's my: Are we gonna see Governor Gilmore back in the public arena here anytime soon? I'd love to get Governor Gilmore back in the mix.
Brett, I appreciate that. It's been my honor to participate in public life for a very, very long time, and I probably will continue to speak out just like I am with you here now. But my goal is to further the interests of the United States and my state, and I will continue to try to play that role while I do many other productive things too.
And you've got a website for one of the organizations that you're kind of helping be part of the conversation with too, right?
Well, I do. We've got a number of things. Gilmore for America. We have the freecongress.org. And I think that very soon now I'm changing that to AmericanOpportunity.org. And there are a lot of other things as well. Look, I'm looking forward to continue to speak to all of your listeners. We've got a big opportunity here, a big opportunity to move away from this Obama foreign policy and administration and to really think new about America. I'm excited about it.
Well, listen, Governor Jim Gilmore, we appreciate you working in some time for the Laura Ingraham Show on this very busy news day. We look forward to visiting with you down the road. And happy Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas to you. And we'll catch up with you in 2017. All right.
Happy holidays to you, Brett. Keep up the good work here. I think you're doing a great job standing in, and I appreciate everything you do on the radio.
Thanks much, sir. I appreciate it. That's Governor Jim Gilmore. He's got some great ideas, and you know what? It is so refreshing to hear somebody come out and articulate a vision that is based on strength and American exceptionalism in leading the world to a better way. And it's why I like to visit with great people like Governor Jim Gilmore. We'll visit with some of the great people on hold straight ahead. Be a part of the discussion. Your reaction to what you've heard. It's all on the table. The recount. Mitt Romney as Secretary of State. The death of Fidel Castro. 855-40-LAURA. 855 for Ingram on your healthy radio addiction. At Ohio State University, an active shooter reported on campus. This happening in just this last a half hour or so. An active shooter on Ohio State University's campus. Students there told to run, hide, and fight. Police are on scene. One report moving out of NBC News saying 7 have been transported to a hospital, and we will get you the absolute latest updates as they become available. ABC News nationally reporting that the FBI is now on the scene of the incident, what they call the incident at Ohio State University. So we know this is a very dangerous and evolving story. Number one. Number two. We also know, and this is something that's very important here, and especially to people within the sound of my voice, if you have friends or family at Ohio State, I wouldn't be ringing their cell phones. I wouldn't be texting them, because if they are sheltering in place, if they are concealing themselves, you certainly don't want to contribute to something that might give away where they are. And this is a very deadly, serious situation. We will get you the latest here on the Laura Ingraham Show. As this story evolves throughout the rest of this program. Certainly we want to take your phone calls as well at 855-40-LAURA, 855-40-LAURA. Matt is in Alabama. Matt, welcome to the show. Brett Witterbull sitting in.
Hey, Brett, how you doing? I'm glad you brought up the story about Romney, because I think that's a much bigger story than the recount or anything. The fact that it seems that Trump's bringing in all of these establishment figures, and Nikki Haley, who strongly opposed him and supported, neocon, Marco Rubio, and this Betsy DeVos or whatever, who supported Common Core throughout the years and supported Jeb Bush. That's what really concerns me. And then I talk to other conservatives in my community about why this is going on, and they say, well, because he needs to have diversity and he needs to get some establishment figures on board and be magnanimous to push his agenda through. Well, that to me is a cop-out, because it doesn't seem like he needs any of them to get his agenda through, because he won the campaign without them and them strongly opposing him. So I don't understand what's going on and why he's even considering these people. Like,
Matt, let me say this. And you ask a great question, okay? And it's this. What are they adding to the conversation? What are they bringing to the conversation? I'm going to answer that question straight ahead, Matt. You keep listening, and anybody else who's on hold there, Kathy, stay there. We'll come to you guys straight ahead. 855-40-LAURA, 855-40-LAURA, latest update out of Ohio State. 8 wounded, 1 critically. We'll get you the updates at the top of the hour. I'm Brett Witterbull on your Healthy Radio Addiction.